My name's Aiden. I'm 16. And the last time I asked my dad for new shoes for my prosthetic leg. He laughed and said, "You don't even walk, right? What's the point?" I didn't have a clever comeback. I just stood there in the kitchen. One hand on the counter, because balancing on tile is harder than people think. While the old footshell on my prosthetic clicked faintly against the floor. It's 3 years old. The socket is too tight, because I've grown. And every step rubs skin that's already raw. The carbon toe plate creaks the way a stair does when the house settles. I told him the foot attachment was cracking and the socket didn't fit anymore. I told him the walk to school left blisters that took weeks to heal. I told him new prosthetic shoes were $180. $180. Exactly. Because I'd looked them up twice. Cross-checked with the clinic. I wrote the number on a sticky note and stuck it to the fridge, like that could make it more real. He took a long sip of coffee, wiped his mouth with the back of his hand, and said, "Ask again at the end of the month." Mom didn't look up from her phone. "You can just wear your old ones a bit longer," she said. Then, as if that settled it, "and keep your weight off it during P.E." The irony is I already did. I'd been sitting out gym for days. Then weeks. Pretending I was tired, when really I was trying not to cry every time I stood. The nurse had run out of the good blister bandages and used gauze and tape. I told Mom. And she murmured, "Put some ointment on it." The way you talk about a hangnail. I should have known that was the answer I was going to get, no matter how bad things looked. That Saturday, Dad and Mom took my older brother, Brandon, to a computer store across town. Brandon is 19, and lives at home rent-free because he's building a streaming career. He calls himself a creator. He has a schedule printed on his wall Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays at 7 p.m., and a neon sign shaped like a lightning bolt that glows blue in the dark. He had exactly 23 subscribers when I checked that weekend. Still, he needed an upgrade. Dad said, "It's an investment." Mom echoed, already putting on her jacket. They were gone for 3 hours and came back with boxes and that breathless excitement people get after buying something shiny. I asked how much, and Dad said, almost proudly, $650. $650. Like he'd negotiated a victory. I looked down at my shoes, the left one normal. Laces frayed, the right one stretched weirdly over the footshell. Held together by hope and habit. The clinic said they can order the prosthetic shoes if we pay up front. I reminded him, "It's $180. Later," Dad said, cutting the tape from a box with his keys. "We're prioritizing." Prioritizing is a word that sounds grown-up until it gets turned into a wall. Mom was already helping Brandon cable manage his desk. She handed me the trash to carry out like I'd just wandered through the scene. In Brandon's room, the dual monitors lit his face like a movie. And the new mechanical keyboard clicked with a sound that made my stomach twist. He didn't look at me. "Don't step on the mat," he said, like I might leave dirt. "It's for my chair." Later that night, I peeled off my sock and saw a ring of dried blood around the edge where the socket bit into skin. I cleaned the stump with saline and tried not to make noise. I cut a foam pad in half to line the pressure point and taped it in place. The tape wrinkled. The pad slid. I told myself it would be okay. That pain meant I was getting stronger. That I just had to hold on until June when Dad always talked about bonus season. As if the month itself was a solution. For as long as I remember, Brandon has been the golden child. When he was little, he'd get trophies for participation, and they'd end up on the mantle like museum pieces. When I brought home an A in freshman biology, Mom said, "Great, honey," and asked Brandon how many views his new video got. When he talked, Dad leaned in. When I spoke, Dad corrected my tone. It's not that I think they hate me. It's that Brandon's needs glow neon in their minds, while mine are just ambient. 3 incidents stand out before everything blew up. The first was a Wednesday at the end of the month. In the same end of the month, Dad had told me to ask again. I'd saved bus money to help. Even though it was a drop in the bucket, I reminded him in the living room. He was scrolling through banking apps. "Dad. The shoes. The clinic said the sooner the better. The doctor wrote the prescription 4 months ago. It's getting worse." I looked up. Irritated. I said later. "We've got bills. We're not made of money." Brandon yelled from his room. "Dad. The capture card is on sale. $99 with the coupon." Dad stood. "See timing. We need to grab that before it's gone." I stood there with my sticky note in my pocket. The $180 figure smudged at the edges. Feeling like someone had quietly lowered the floor 3 inches. The second was the following Monday. After I tried to jog from the bus stop because I was late, the socket chafed. Skin tore. And by the time I made it to first period, I was lightheaded. During fifth period, Coach Raman Mr. Raman to everyone who isn't on a team stopped me when he saw me sitting on the bleachers for the third week straight. Everything okay? He asked. I tried to shrug. Just tired, I said. He watched me a long moment. The kind of look that isn't suspicious so much as patient. That's not tired, he said. That's pain. What's going on? Something about the way he asked made me break. I rolled up my pant leg in the equipment room. The padding inside the socket had worn through to hard plastic. The edge had a hairline crack that was spreading. The stump was patchworked with gauze and tape. A went very quiet. Come with me, he said. Not loud, but with a firmness that made it impossible to refuse. He took me straight to the nurse's office. Ms. Kayla had missed it. It took photos with the school tablet. Measured the circumference of my stump. Measured the socket. Wrote everything down. How long has it been like this? She asked. Months, I said. We've been busy. The words felt borrowed from Mom's mouth. Ms. Keller called my parents. We need to discuss your son's prosthetic situation, she said. Calm as a metronome. Today. They showed up annoyed an hour later. Dad said. We're in the middle of work. Mom clutched her bag like someone might try to take it. The principal, Dr. Patel, joined us. Ms. Keller slid the photos across the desk. One by one. Without drama. Mr. Raman stood near the door like a witness. Your son has documented medical needs, Dr. Patel said. This condition puts him at risk for infection and falls. This is not optional. Mom's face drained. We're not neglecting him, she said quickly. We love our son. You spent $650 on a gaming PC upgrade while his prosthetic is damaged. Mr. Raman said. His voice even. He has infected wounds from equipment that doesn't fit. What would you call that? Dad rubbed his temple. We're just prioritizing, he muttered. Prioritizing a gaming setup over a medical device. Mr. Raman said. Is the very definition of neglect. Dr. Patel folded her hands. We are mandatory reporters. The nurse has documented this for weeks. We are legally required to file a report with Child Protective Services. You can't do that, Mom said. Voice rising. This is private family business. Actually, we already filed it this morning. Ms. Keller said. Still calm. She didn't look triumphant. She looked tired. The meeting ended with my parents furious and talking about lawyers. I just felt empty. And like I'd reached a point I couldn't back away from, and couldn't push past either. On the ride home, Dad said. I can't believe they ambushed us. As if the photos had staged themselves. Brandon called from the hallway when we walked in. Hey, Dad. That coupon expires tonight. The third incident was smaller. But it haunts me. That weekend. I shuffled into the kitchen before sunrise, because walking hurts less when the house is quiet. I made oatmeal because it's soft and warm and asks nothing of you. Mom wondered in yawning. Hair in a messy bun. And asked. Are you going to church or staying home? I said. I'd stay home to rest my leg. She nodded. Poured coffee. And said. If you're staying, can you load the dishwasher and vacuum? Brandon has a big stream later and needs quiet while he sets up. I looked at her. At the hollows under her eyes. At the way she avoided looking at my leg. Mom, I said softly. I need the shoes. I need the new socket. The clinic said the foot shell could fail. If I fall? We know. Aiden, she said, rubbing her temple. We're going to get it. We've just been busy. She placed her mug down. Already turning away. Don't forget to take the trash out. It smells. People tell you to advocate for yourself. To speak clearly about what you need. They don't tell you what to do when you do all of that, and the answer is still no. They don't tell you how to hold your voice steady when you're asking for something as basic as the ability to walk. I wish I could say I stayed brave or noble. Mostly I got quiet. I limped worse. Some days I stayed home from school because I couldn't face the stairs. The hallways. The eyes watching the way I move. When I did go, I sat out of gym. Out of lunch. Out of everything that involved standing. Which is to say most of being 16. Mr. Raman started checking in every day. Ms. Keller asked to see the bandages twice a week. Doctor. Patel made a point of saying hello in the hallway. It felt like the adults at school had formed a small, serious circle around me. While at home, I was a chore list with a heartbeat. I should have known that the day the report went in, something would change. I should have known you can only stack later so high before it topples. But even then, at the edge of everything, a part of me clung to the idea that if I was patient and careful and not too loud, the people who were supposed to help me would finally hear me. Instead, what I heard first was Brandon's keyboard from down the hall. The new keys clicking like distant rain, and Dad's voice saying, "Ready. Champ," like the world was exactly as it should be. And somewhere in that sound between the clicking and the word champ, I felt the crack in my prosthetic widen just a little more, like a warning you don't want to believe. The kind that tells you the next step might be the one that breaks something you can't tape back together. 2 weeks after the meeting at school, I was in the kitchen trying to cut the heel cup out of an old sneaker to stretch it over the footshell when the doorbell rang. It was just after 8, on a Tuesday. And the house still smelled like whatever candle Mom lit to pretend mornings are calmer than they are. Dad called. "Aiden." "Don't answer it." But I was already halfway to the door because momentum is a kind of courage. The woman on the porch held up a badge in a slim leather wallet. "Good morning. I'm Maria Rivera with Child Protective Services. May I come in?" Her voice wasn't sharp or sugary, it had that steady tone of a person who has repeated the sentence so many times the edges are smooth. Dad appeared behind me. Shoulders square. "Yaf, Seth. We're on our way to work," he said. "This won't take long." "Ms. Rivera said. And it's unannounced by design." She waited. It struck me that she was smaller than my mom. Hair pinned back in a no-nonsense way. A notebook already open in her hand. She didn't try to step past us. She just held the moment until Dad exhaled and moved aside. She started in the living room, writing down the date and time. "The names of everyone present. Tell me about your household," she said. Mom did the talking. "We're a two-parent home. 2 sons. Brandon is 19. Working on a content channel. Aiden is 16. A good student." Mom said it with the faint lift of someone who knows how to present. When Ms. Rivera asked about my medical equipment, Mom glanced toward the hallway. "We've been looking into options. We're busy. Let's take a look." Ms. Rivera said. "Aiden, can you show me your prosthetic?" I led her to my room. I took off the shoe and sock and rolled my pant leg. The choreography familiar and humiliating. Up close, the socket's inner foam looked like a chewed pencil eraser. The edge had a hairline crack wide enough to pinch skin when I shifted weight. The footshell was shiny where it shouldn't be. A worn spot that says too much friction for too long. I heard my own breath get shallow. "Has a medical professional examined this recently?" she asked. "The school nurse documented it," I said. "There's a prescription from my prosthetist. From 4 months ago." I opened my desk drawer and pulled out the paper. It had been folded and unfolded so many times the crease looked like a scar. Ms. Rivera read the letterhead. "The recommendation replacement socket due to growth and fit issues. Footshell replacement recommended. Updated shoe prescription." She nodded once and took a photo with her work phone. Then another of my leg. Gently asking, "Okay, to document this," I nodded. It felt strange to grant permission for evidence that already existed. She asked to see Brandon's room next. Dad stiffened. But she was already walking down the hallway, writing as she went. Brandon's door was decorated with a vinyl decal that said "On Air" in glossy red. Inside, the glow hit us first. 2 monitors mounted on adjustable arms. A new black and chrome chair with a quilted back. LED strips tucked under the desk, washing the wall in neon blue. Cables braided into tidy snakes. A ring light the size of a steering wheel. Ms. Rivera paced the edge of the rug, stepping around a neatly coiled green screen. "How much did this setup cost?" she asked. Dad's nostrils flared. "I don't see how that's relevant. I'm determining if there's a pattern of neglect regarding a medical device while non-essential purchases were prioritized," she said. "Still, gentle. A ballpark figure is helpful." Brandon spoke up from his chair. He had his headset around his neck. Hair flattened where it rested. Chair was $180 on sale. Keyboard, $110. GPU, $650 with tax. Capture card, $99. Mic, $200. Monitors were gifts. He paused, proud in a shy way. Then, defensively, "This is my job." "Do you earn income from streaming?" Ms. Rivera asked. "Not yet," Brandon said quickly. "But you have to invest to grow." Mom's voice entered the space. Brittle. "Kids need hobbies," she said. It keeps them out of trouble. Ms. Rivera made a small note. And the prosthetic shoes for Aiden would cost $180. Yes, I said quietly. And the socket needs replacing. She looked at me for a long second. Not with pity, but with attention. Thank you, she said. Let's sit at the table. We gathered in the kitchen. Ms. Rivera laid out what would happen next in sentences that clicked into place like building blocks. There would be a formal report. A medical evaluation would be scheduled within 72 hours. If a device was deemed unsafe, there would be an order to remedy that immediately. Parenting classes might be required. Financial penalties were possible. If the home environment became hostile, temporary placement with relatives could be discussed. She said all of this in a voice you could carry a glass of water on. Mom's cheeks flushed. We are not bad parents, she said. This is humiliating. I believe you love your son. Ms. Rivera said. Neglect is about actions and outcomes, not feelings. Dad stood up so fast, the chair legs squealed. We're being painted as monsters because a school wants to cover itself. Ms. Rivera didn't flinch. She handed him a copy of the state statute. Highlighted. This is the definition, she said. This is the standard I am required to apply. After she left, the house was too quiet. Dad started pacing like the hallway was a track. They're going to fine us, he said to the ceiling. Over a misunderstanding. Mom's mouth was a hard line. We'll go to the clinic, she said. Make the appointment. Get this over with. She looked at me only briefly, as if my face were bright enough to hurt eyes. That afternoon, Ms. Keller called to tell us the medical evaluation was set for Thursday, 2 days away at a clinic across town that took emergency referrals. They can do the assessment and an interim fitting the same day, if indicated, she said. You'll need to be there at 9. Dad grumbled about missing work but didn't argue. Thursday morning. We drove in a silence that made my ears ring. The clinic was clean without being cold. Walls painted a soft green that someone had chosen to say, "We see you," without saying anything. A prosthetist named Ben shook my hand, looked me in the eye, and asked questions that lived in the details where exactly it hurt. At what angle? After how many minutes? What shoes made it worse? What time of day the swelling peaked? He ran a hand along the socket's edge. Not touching skin. Just measuring the gap with his gaze. You've grown a lot, he said. This fit is unsafe. Hearing it out loud did something inside me I can't name. Relief and shame wrestle in the same ring more often than people admit. Ben got to work. He took impressions. Marked my leg with a washable pen. Tested different liners. We can do an emergency refit today, he said to my parents. It will stabilize things and protect the skin while we cast for a custom socket. How much? Dad asked. Cross-armed. The emergency fitting is $800 due today, the receptionist said from the doorway. As if she knew that number was a threshold. The custom socket and footshell will be $2,400. We'll bill in 2 parts. Your insurance will cover a portion after authorization. But because this is an emergency order, and the previous prescription lapsed, the deposit is required. Mom's jaw worked. A muscle ticking. $800 today. Yes, the receptionist said. Kind, but immovable. Given the CPS order, we need to proceed. Dad laughed once without humor. Of course you do. I stared at the floor and memorized a scuff mark shaped like a comma. I kept thinking. This is what a line looks like when it stops being theoretical. You step over it. Or you don't. They paid. It felt like a courtroom gavel inside a clinic. Ben came back with a temporary setup, ugly in that way temporary things are. A patchwork of foam and straps that cared nothing about aesthetics. When I stood, the absence of pain hit me so fast I had to grab the rail. Ben steadied me. Take a minute, he said. Your brain is recalibrating. It's been protecting you for months. I walked down a hallway painted with a mural of kids riding bikes and climbing trees. Each step felt like a sentence unclenching. My foot still ached. But the hot, grinding bite was gone. Mom watched me with her arms crossed, eyes glassy. Dad looked at the bill again, and again, like the numbers might change if he stared hard enough. On the ride home, he said. We could have done this without the school sticking their noses in. But we didn't, I said before I could stop myself. The car went quiet in that way where all the moving air turns into something you can hear. The following week was a stack of consequences printed on official paper. A letter from the county, a fine for medical neglect, a timetable for parenting classes they had to attend. A court order confirming the emergency fitting and setting a deadline for the custom device. A separate order for anger management sessions for Dad after his behavior at the school meeting, $200 per session. 12 weeks. He scoffed. But the scoff sounded thinner now. At home. The air thickened. Dad was short-tempered. Then weirdly tender. Then distant in cycles that made me dizzy. Mom started wiping down surfaces that were already clean. Brandon retreated further into his room. Emerging from meals and packages, I could feel his resentment, like heat. "You didn't have to drag the whole state into our business," he said one night. "I'm not looking at me. Now everyone's on edge." "I told them because it hurt," I said. "Because I couldn't walk." My voice was level in a way I didn't recognize as mine. He shrugged. Eyes on his screen. "Everyone hurts," he said. "You just deal." He streamed twice that week and then once the next. His uploads got 20 views. Then 13. He started snapping at his chat. One-word answers that felt like shutting windows in a storm. The ring light made his skin look perfect while his patience frayed. He posted a schedule change graphic. Then another. Then a vague, taking a break message. I kept walking the hallway in my temporary socket. Relearning the rhythm of wait and release. Heel then toe. Like a language you thought you'd forgotten, but your mouth remembers. At school. "Mr. Raman watched me step onto the court, and back off with a hand up. Not pushing. "How's the new fit?" he asked. "Strange," I said. "Good strange." "Strange is a bridge," he said. "You're crossing it." Ms. Keller checked the skin twice a week. The angry red was fading to pink. Then to that pale newness that looks almost like paper. "Dr. Patel pulled me aside one afternoon. "We're proud of you," she said. For telling the truth even when it was complicated. I didn't know what to do with that sentence. Pride felt like an outfit borrowed from someone taller. One afternoon. Mr. Raman found me in the library printing a copy of the grant application he'd emailed the day before. "It's through a veterans foundation that also supports civilian youth," he said. "They have a small discretionary fund for mobility equipment. You qualify." "I'm not a veteran," I said. Embarrassed by the idea of taking help not meant for me. "They support kids of veterans and kids referred by school athletic departments when there's documented need," he said. "We have the documentation. We have the need." He smiled crookedly. "And you're mine for 5th period. Which makes you an honorary athlete." We filled out the forms at a table hidden by stacks. He asked for details and I gave them because he didn't rush me dates. Costs. The prescription, 4 months old. The photos, Ms. Keller took. The emergency fitting receipt for $800. The quote, for $2. Sube. He made a neat packet the way some people fold fitted sheets flawlessly. At home that night, Dad found the packet in my backpack and held it up. "What is this?" "A grande application," I said. "If it's approved, it could cover part of the cost." "We're already paying," he said. "We don't need charity." "It isn't charity," I said, feeling heat rise to my face. "It's a fund that exists for this." Mom stepped between us. Voice level in a way that always means she's holding on to the last rung. "Let him apply," she said. "It doesn't hurt." Dad dropped the packet on the counter. Paper fanned like a deck of cards mid-trick. "Fine," he said. "Do whatever. I have a class tonight." He said class like it was jury duty. At 9 sharp. He left for anger management. The front door closed with a decisive click. Brandon slid into the kitchen and poured cereal even though it was dark outside. "This whole thing," he said. Spoon clinking. "It's wrecking our vibe." "Our vibe," I repeated. The phrase made something inside me laugh and want to cry. "I was building momentum," he said. "Now the energy is off." I stared at him. At the boy who was technically a man. At the posters of streamers on his wall, doing smiling poses with headsets. "I need to walk without bleeding," I said. "That's the energy I'm chasing." He went red. Then Polly. "You think I don't have problems?" "I think we all do," I said. "I think some of them are fixable and should be fixed first." He left the bowl in the sink with milk still in it. A white crescent floating. He didn't stream the next day. Or the next. He posted a video 2 weeks later saying he was pivoting to in-real-life content. Which meant talking to the camera about motivation while sitting in the same chair that had cost $180. It got 40 views. The day the court order for the custom socket came through, Mom called me at school to say the deposit had been paid. Her voice shook like a note held too long. They gave a timeline 2 weeks. She said. They said it'll fit better. They said you'll be more comfortable. For a second, all I could picture was the soft green clinic wall and the scuff mark shaped like a comma. A pause. Not an ending. I hung up and sat on the steps outside the gym and watched the late sun stripe the floor through high windows. My leg felt held instead of bitten. The ache was still there. But it was clean. Not the dirty kind that crawls under your skin. At dinner that night, nobody mentioned the classes or the fines. Dad asked how school was without looking up. Mom set a casserole on the table and said, "Careful. It's hot." Brandon picked at salad leaves like they were decisions. The house felt like a stage set where everyone remembered their lines but none of the cues. Later, I lay in bed and listened to the house, find its night rhythm, the hum of the fridge, the click of the hallway light, the creak of the vent. Somewhere in the darkness, a small, stubborn thought kept knocking. What if the thing that broke wasn't just the plastic and foam? What if, one day, the story of this house is that we let light in because we had to? I don't know if that's hope or naivete. Maybe both. But in the morning, when I pull on my sock and feel the temporary socket hug instead of bite, I think about bridges like Mr. Roman said. You don't have to love the wind to cross. You just set your weight down, and then the other and then the other. And you keep moving until the ground on the far side is yours. The morning after, Mom called about paying the deposit for the custom socket. I woke up to the smell of burnt toast and the sound of Dad rehearsing sentences under his breath. He was supposed to go to his second anger management session that evening. He paced the kitchen in his socks. Reading from a worksheet, identify. Don't justify, respond. Don't react. The phrases sounded like furniture being dragged across the floor, useful, but loud. I buttered the good half of the toast and left the blackened corner like a border. Mom slid the stack of mail toward him. A white envelope with the county seal sat on top. He opened it with a butter knife. Scanned. And exhaled hard. The fine posted. He said. Due in 30 days. How much? Mom asked. Enough. He said. Folding the paper too carefully. He does that when he's trying not to crumple things or people. We'll figure it out. I took the bus to school with the emergency socket, hugging my leg like a new rule. It was still awkward. Stairs felt like puzzles again, but there was space in my head to notice other things. The sky was the exact gray of an unsharpened pencil. Someone's scarf got caught in the bus door and flapped like a tiny flag until the driver freed it. All of it felt like proof that the world had kept moving while I'd been stuck measuring pain. Mr. Rahman flagged me down at the end of 5th period. Grant update, he said, holding a printout. They've acknowledged receipt. They're asking for 2 extra items, a letter from your prosthetist and a brief statement from you. I already wrote the statement, I said, patting my backpack. It's about walking to school. The blisters. The cost breakdown. He nodded. Good. Keep it factual and focused. Which you did. I'll email Ben at the clinic for the letter. He hesitated. How's home? Grading itself, I said. C- tension. Solid B, in awkward silence. He huffed a laugh that dissolved into concern. Holler. If that changes? At lunch, I sat with 2 kids from biology who mostly talked about mitochondria and pop songs. A weirdly comforting mix. They didn't ask how my leg was, they asked if I'd seen the astronomy club's eclipse glasses order form. It felt like being allowed to be 16 in ways that had nothing to do with court orders or insurance. After school, Ms. Rivera, she'd asked me to switch from formal to first name last visit. But in my head, she's still Ms. Rivera called to say she'd be stopping by the house for a check-in. I'll be there at 5. She said. Is that a good time? Any time is better than a surprise, I said, meaning it. Then felt guilty, because her first visit had to be unannounced on purpose. She just said, I appreciate the honesty. Brandon was in the living room when I got home, sprawled on the couch with his laptop. He dragged a ring light out there and was filming a reset routine, which looked a lot like rearranging cushions and narrating it. Background matters, he said, as if to the room. As if I were the room. People need aesthetic calm. People need rant. Dad muttered from the dining table. He had a calculator and a legal pad out. Numbers lined up like soldiers facing the wrong way. At 5 sharp, the doorbell rang. Ms. Rivera stepped in with the same notebook. The same patient posture. She asked how the clinic visit had gone. I told her about Ben and the hallway mural, and the scuff mark like a comma. She wrote that down word for word, which made me feel both exposed and heard. She asked to see the emergency socket. I showed her the fit and the lack of fresh bandages. The skin is healing, she observed. No sign of infection. She asked Mom for the receipt for the $800 payment and the deposit confirmation for the custom device. Mom produced them from a folder she'd labeled Aiden, Medical. Her fingers shook just slightly when she slid the papers free. Ms. Rivera glanced toward the living room. Brandon's ring light was still on, washing everything in artificial daylight. Brandon, she said. Warm but direct. How's your channel? He lifted his chin. Improving. Pivoting to lifestyle helps. Are you working outside the home as well? She asked. He frowned. Streaming is work. It can be, she said. What about income right now? He flinched. I'm building. She made a note. Okay. Dad leaned forward. Voice a notch too loud. Are we done being measured? We're checking progress, she said. Unbothered. Progress looks good in terms of Aiden's medical device. The court will expect continued attendance at parenting and anger management classes. I'll note compliance. When she left, Brandon said at the ceiling, I don't like her. She doesn't live here to be liked. Mom said, surprising all of us. Her voice didn't have heat in it. Just edges. That night, Dad went to class. When he came home, he looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. He stood in the doorway of my room and said, the instructor asked us to apologize to someone without explaining or defending. Just apologize. He swallowed. So, I'm sorry. Aiden. I almost asked for what? Then stopped, because that would drag him back into explaining territory. Into the thicket, he was trying to step around. Thanks, I said. It felt thin and true. He nodded once and left. As if anything more would break the spell. The next few days were a strange calm. Maybe not calm, more like low tide. You can see the rocks then. Nothing hidden. Everything sharp. Brandon posted less. Then not at all. He told his viewers in a shaky voice that he was focusing on personal growth. The comment section was small and kind, which somehow made it worse for him. He started Googling jobs in private browsing like the internet couldn't tattle. On Friday, Ben called. Your custom socket will be ready for a test fit next Wednesday, he said. We'll do pressure mapping and gate analysis. Plan to be here 2 hours. I hung up and let the words sink in. Like dropping a stone in still water and counting concentric circles. Test fit. Pressure mapping. Gate analysis. 2 hours. It sounded clinical and also like a chance to own my body again. At school that afternoon. Dr. Patel caught me in the hallway. You look taller, she said. I think it's the posture, I said. Less guarding. She smiled. Guarding is a full-time job. Glad you're on leave. NP. E. Mr. Rahman, let me referee a scrimmage. Whistles give you a little power you don't expect. You get to say, stop, and start. Do it over. After. He handed me a worn paperback about running, that wasn't really about running, a book about discipline and small wins and feet on pavement. You don't have to read it, he said. But it helped me when my knee was fried in college. I thought you were born with those calves, I said. Traded knees for them, he said. Bad bargain. On Wednesday, Mom drove me to the clinic. Hands at 10 and 2, like a driving test. In the waiting room, she kept smoothing the same wrinkle on her skirt. I'm sorry, she blurted. I'm not looking at me. The words tumbled out like marbles. For how long it took. For saying we were busy. We were. But that's not the point. I know, I said. It wasn't absolution. But it was a step. Ben fitted the custom socket with the care of someone adjusting a musical instrument. He slid pressure sensors under the liner. I had me walk across a lighted walkway that flashed red where I carried too much weight. Green, where things aligned. We're close, he said. Making tiny adjustments with a hex key. Tell me when it stops feeling like a foreign language. It didn't stop feeling foreign exactly. But it started sounding like a dialect I could learn. He swapped the cracked foot shell for a new one that didn't shine in the wrong places. He tightened. Checked. Retightened. I had me walk again. The computer showed less red. My body showed less flinch. When we left, Mom took me for ice cream at a place we never go, because it's too indulgent. Watching me lift the cone, she said quietly. You walk different. I feel different, I said. The strip mall sun was bright. Ordinary. Perfect. That night, Brandon knocked, headset drooping like a wilted flower. I'm selling the GPU, the 651. I can get 400. Dad's freaking about the fine. You don't have to, I said. Because fairness can still sting. I do, he said, eyes flicking to my leg. Also, I applied at the electronics store. Part-time. They like people who can explain stuff. You can, I said. And meant it. On Saturday, Ms. Rivera did one more check-in. If things held, we'd move to monthly. She verified the new socket. Scanned the clinic report. Ticked boxes. Aiden. Do you feel safe and supported? Yes, I said, and then, trying to answer fully now, more than before. Not all the way, but more. That's movement, she said. We chart movement. After she left, Dad sat with bills and Brandon's brittle envelope of 400 blank. He added. Subtracted. Stared. We'll be okay, he said, finally looking at me. We should have been okay sooner. Mom touched his wrist. Brandon did the dishes without being asked. The house exhaled. I stood later without bracing for pain. The quiet felt enormous. I finished my grant statement. I'm not asking for extra, just what makes school and life possible: a device that fits. Shoes that don't tear. Steps that don't cost more than they should. I want in. At school and home. Progress showed up in small ways: cleaner stride. Fewer guardings, worksheets, on the table. Pause before you speak. Name the feeling. Not the enemy parenting assignments on the fridge. Ms. Rivera ran a case review. Teachers noted attendance. Modified standing time. Wound improvements. Neglect is defined by outcomes, she said. If compliance slips, we escalate. I want a stable, boring file. We had a brief court check-in. The judge reviewed emergency device fitted. Custom in progress. Classes attended. Fine, paid in part. After. Dad bought pretzels and handed me mustard like a truce. Normal tasted like salt and yellow. The final fitting day. Ben adjusted the socket like a tailor. Pressure maps showed more green than red. The clinic printout said $2. Sube. Assurance pending. No one asked to delay. At home. Flare-ups happened. Then paused. Dad named the feeling instead of the enemy. Brandon turned down a light and heat in the room dropped. Then the envelope arrived from the Veterans Foundation, approved $2. 000 for equipment and shoes. Paid to the clinic. Mom covered her mouth. Dad traced the letterhead. Brandon breathed out like a tire, finding road. We called the clinic. They updated the invoice and ordered the shoes. The letter went on the fridge beside receipts and schedules, a collage of turning points. I wrote thank yous I hope to send. Then the real one. We recycled the cracked foot shell and the barely used ring light. More small wins. Brandon kept the channel but took the job. Then more shifts. Ms. Keller retired my wound chart. Ms. Rivera moved us to monthly and hinted at closing the case if nothing changed. I taped 2 notes inside my closet, $180, and walked to school without calculating pain. In the morning. I did. Heel. A2. Breath. Step. If you've been told to wait while you hurt. I don't have a slogan. Just this: bridges don't build themselves. Ask for the planks. Name the gaps. Let people do their jobs. And when your steps stop costing more than they should, look back long enough to see how far you came, then keep going.